unless we have access to our visceral experience of what doesn't work for us, of the no, then we're not going to be having beautiful sex or an exuberant life.
Before we dive into this week's episode, let's talk about a brand we both genuinely love, Cytoplan. You've probably heard us mention them before, and that's because their supplements are next level.
Yes, Cytoplan has been part of my routine for a while now. They just get it when it comes to health. Their whole approach is rooted in science and totally in tune with nature.
Exactly. Their formulas are bioeffective, which basically means the nutrients are in forms your body actually recognizes and uses properly and at the appropriate levels. Cytoplan is used and trusted by health practitioners across the country. Their formulas are developed by nutritional therapists and backed by over 3 decades of clinical insight. You really can feel the quality when you take them.
Plus, it's not just about what's in the bottle, it's the mission behind it too. Cytoplan is 100% owned by a charitable foundation, which means everything they do is about helping people live well for longer. It's not about trends or quick fixes, it's about real, lasting health.
That is so wonderful to know. And whether it's our energy, perimenopause, menopause itself, sleep, immunity, or just staying on top of your health, they've got you covered. You can also get a free health questionnaire and a consultation by ringing the helpline.
So if you're ready to take ownership of your health, check out Cytoplan, powered by nature, proven by science, and rooted in purpose. We'll pop the link and an exclusive 15% discount code in the show notes.
Before we begin today's episode, we'd like to share a gentle content note for you. In this conversation, Karen and I are exploring Tantra and Neo-Tantra, and we do speak about intimacy, sexuality, and relational connection. These topics are discussed in a respectful, conscious, and grounded way, but we wanted to let you know in advance. Please choose a time and space to listen that feels right for you. And as always, take what resonates and leave the rest. Thank you for listening, and we hope this conversation supports deeper connection with yourself and with others.
Hello, I'm Karen Mellers.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life.
It's my great pleasure to introduce my lovely friend and highly esteemed colleague, Leora Lightwoman. Leora initially studied psychology at Oxford University and went on to study body psychotherapy and sexual development, as well as couples counselling and somatic experiencing trauma therapy. Her own Tantra training started with the Tantra pioneer Margot Anand, who wrote the books The Art of Sexual Ecstasy and The Art of Sexual Magic. Leora founded her own training school called Diamond Light Tantra in 1996, and she ran in-depth trainings for over 20 years. She wrote about her experiences in her book Tantra, The Path to Blissful Sex, and has since created online courses to introduce people to what she calls Neo-Tantra, where she focuses on the development of intimacy in relationship. Her own personal practice is deepened through the study of meditation and yoga with the Isha Foundation of Satguru. Leora draws on her personal and professional life experiences to hold a beautiful, safe and attuned space for healing, expansion, fulfillment and transformation in her work with individuals and couples. How lucky are we to have you with us today, dear Leora, joining us from your current yoga retreat in Costa Rica.
Hello, so it's the best part of my week again. It's the Alive and Loving It podcast, and we're at episode 29 now. And we've got a wonderful guest for you this week, and it's a very dear friend of Rosy's. So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Rosy, to introduce our wonderful guest.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen, and welcome, Leora. So Leora and I have known each other for, I think it's around 30 years. So we're very good and very long-standing friends. And Leora is with us today in this principle of relationships, as Leora has taken a very deep, long, profound journey into the study of Tantra and has evolved that into Neo-Tantra and is now doing incredible work, well, have been doing for all these years. So Leora, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Thank you, Karen. I really, really feel blessed to be here and very, very touched.
Great. And you're joining us from Costa Rica.
I'm joining you from Costa Rica, where I was on the beach yesterday. Yes, it does help.
Rosie, have we missed something here? We should have done this one on location. Can I put that out, please, for the next time Leora comes on?
Absolutely love that. Completely.
And I'm sure, actually, Leora, for many people listening, this is an entirely new subject. So what would be fantastic is if you could give us the general picture of what Tantra is first, and then how that's evolved for you into what you're calling Neo-Tantra.
With pleasure. And I think that's always the hardest place to start, because we're talking about something that can't really be talked about. Because Tantra is really about non-duality, which is, again, a word. But it's about the fact that the word itself means tan and tra are weaving and expansion. And so we can imagine that as we weave together all the strands of life, there's this natural sense where we start to feel ourselves as bigger than this physical body. And what does this weaving mean? Well, with the Tantra, the Neo-Tantra, I'll come to that. What we're doing, what we're practicing is really attuning to another person with this quality of devotion. And I'll be introducing you also to a meditation where we can do that, not just with another person, but with any object. It's so simple in one sense. And once we start to really experience this quality of devotion, we start to experience ourselves as part of, or that object or person are part of us. So in that, we are no longer this little creature. We are something a bit bigger. And that can be extended so that we start to have a direct experience of life rather than me, the personality. And traditionally, Tantra has been conveyed through, initially in India, but I understand that there are tantric strands in most mystical traditions, even in most religions. And, it's been conveyed by an enlightened master. So that's a far cry from what we now call Neo-Tantra, which is because now in the West we have access to this information without necessarily having access to the real experience of what that means. There's been, in a way, a bastardization, a synthesis, we could call it, whichever way you want to go, whereby many people have taken on some of what we understand from traditional Tantra and combined it with therapeutic techniques and processes that enable people to, well, this is the thing about Tantra, enable people to what? So it might enable people to have a better sexual experience. Now, traditional Tantra, only a teeny section of that has anything to do with sexuality. And when it does, it's not about enhancing sexuality. It's about utilizing sexuality as a means to awakening. So when we use this word Tantra today, we're pretty much always using what's understood to be Neo-Tantra. Neo means new. It's not Tantra, but we're thinking of it in the context of Tantra. And it's completely inaccurate to call a good sexual experience Tantra. But at the same time, it's incredibly useful to have a context to view sexuality and to utilize it as a method to enhance beauty and intimacy in relationships, which makes life more glowing and makes all sorts of things possible. I would say so much of our world troubles are to do with a lack of this comprehension. So it's phenomenally useful.
Wow. Well, what a lot to put into 2 or 3 minutes, that idea of the weaving together and the expanding and the touching into unity consciousness or bliss or ecstasy, but how that has come, as you're saying, into the enriching and creation of beauty and intimacy in relationship. And oh my goodness, don't we need that? And so let's talk about you for a moment, sweetheart, in terms of what brought you into this line of study.
Well, I'm incredibly grateful because when I was in my 20s, I encountered Tantra by accident, really. I was a yoga teacher. I had completed a psychology degree at Oxford. I was a body worker and I was dissatisfied. And I found myself, not having heard the word before, at a conference where Tantra was being presented. And although I was academically accomplished, I was very successful at what I was doing with yoga and body work. My relationships were not brilliant. And, that really stemmed from what I'd picked up from my family background and the patterns I'd engendered from that. So I turned up at this workshop and I was blown away. I was like, my heart opened really properly, for the first time, in the sense that I found myself feeling incredibly close to various people, not to do with sexual attraction, just to do with openness, feeling in love with multiple people. And so I realized, well, it's not the people. It must be something that's happened in me through these processes. And my world went from being rigid to being softer, more textured, more technicolor. And I just knew that was, what I wanted to understand and experience more of.
Wonderful. And I know you got to work with the great Margot Anand.
I was exceptionally fortunate. So then very soon after that, I had the opportunity to enter into her teacher training course, which at that time was in California. And yeah, she was quite a character, but she was a pioneer. Like, nobody had heard of Neo-Tantra. She was the person who mostly had brought that over at that time. And I just remember one part of that training where I was quite shy. I mean, I've been teaching yoga, but that's very practical. It was small groups. It was very hands-on. And I was talking to this big group of people about my experiences. And she just interrupted me and asked me to connect with something which basically took me inside my own sexual experience, which took me inside my own heart, which took me inside my own sense of authenticity. And I was loving it after that. And I think that really typified for me, that this is all about our experience inside and how to bring ourselves, our true selves, out into the world.
Absolutely. Well, Karen, I'm sure that's resonating with you.
Well, it is, but I can feel I'm a new beginner here in this language. Those times where you're on the edge of your understanding and it's so exciting for me. I'm hungry and listening to every single word, Leora, but the word that keeps coming to me is connection, which I know it sort of probably doesn't do it justice. And I've used that word in the previous episode, and I've used it in my work in women's circles. But what I'm sensing now from hearing you speak is the deeper connection that comes from going inwards and finding your connection to everything, this whole universe that we're part of, and how that impacts the exchange with another person or an object. Whereas to me, connection might have been, I've got to be for that other person, or I need to do something for that other person. And this is blowing my mind. It's like flipping it completely into, I need to come here and know what's going on here, and then relate differently, relate from that place. Yeah, I'm eager to hear more, Leo. I'm hooked already. You had me at hello. Yes.
Thank you. I love how you've actually brought it to life in clear, simple, but profound language. I'm really grateful for that. Thank you. And I think that's the nub of it, because when, let's say it's two people wanting to be intimate, if I'm all over you and you're all over me, nobody's at home. Nothing's happening. But if I'm connected to the source in me of love and care and, interest, and if I can feel, and I think this word sexuality is really confusing for all of us, because if we think about Eskimos, they have a lot of words for snow, lots and lots. I've heard it's something like 42, or it might be more than that. We have snow. But they can then describe this snow and this snow. And when you go out in this snow, and we have sexuality, which is equated in English with genitals. And I once remember doing a talk many years ago where I just got this image of sexuality like this very long road that goes, almost from the center of the city up through the various landscapes up into the highlands, where sexuality is all of those qualities, but it expresses itself differently in different locations. So sexuality can be a genital experience. And in Tantra, we're looking at how to enjoy that genital experience in a meditative way, so it doesn't become compulsive.
Mm.
So it's not just got to get there, which itself isn't that
pleasurable. That brings. Yeah, well, it comes with a whole load of anxiety, and pressure. We're talking about a whole journey. It starts with a hello.
Totally.
So I watched a really great program on iPlayer, I think, this sort of Scottish Norwegian crime drama, and they captured a moment where this woman walked in and saw this guy open the door, and there was an instant like, hello. Mm-hmm. It was really powerful. It just came back into my mind, and you described that start of the whole journey.
There's actually a Tantric sutra which says, at the start of sexual union, be attentive to the flame in the beginning, and in so doing, and in so continuing, avoid the embers at the end. And how I understand that, it's exactly what you're saying. It starts with the hello. If you miss the hello, everything's gone. If we slow down and feel what's actually happening here and now, we can rest in that.
Wow. I'm sure this is resonating so much with people listening. How many of us have had sexual experiences where we're on our own, and we're not connecting, and we get lost in the process. So I'd love, you've described some themes, Leora, that you'd like to expand upon, starting with this question of, you call it beautiful boundaries. Can you say more about what that means?
Totally. Well, it can mean different things in different contexts, but essentially, unless we have access to our visceral experience of what doesn't work for us, of the no, then we're not going to be having beautiful sex or an exuberant life. So this was very pertinent to me because I was definitely in this place when I came to Tantra. I just didn't know when I was outside of what was right for me. It just didn't. Well, I did somewhere, but I wasn't registering it. And I think this is the case with many people, that the problem is not so much saying no to something. The problem is actually knowing that something isn't quite right and acknowledging that. And the thing is that things can be not quite right in different ways. So, for example, I might love someone and feel very open to them in my heart, but there might be something going on sexually that isn't quite right. But it doesn't really matter because I love them and da-da-da-da-da, and surely relationship is about compromise. But the more that we do that, the more we go against the body saying to us, oh, I'm not sure about that, the more we dampen the experience. So one couple, and by the way, I'm going to be talking about couples and individuals who I work with. Some of these couples are people who've given me permission to talk about them. I'm not going to identify or give any biographical details. And others, I'm going to say this couple, but they're actually a composite. So if you're my client, you might recognize yourself, but it's not just you. If you're not my client, you may also hopefully recognize yourself, because it's not just me, you, them, it's us. So we have this exercise that we do, which is called yes, no, maybe, please. And it simplifies things. So one person initiates some kind of contact, can be anything, can be movement, can be gentle touch. If they're on their own, it can be a sexual connection, but it happens slowly, and they're doing it because they're enjoying it, not for any other purpose. They're not trying to stimulate something or get something. They're just enjoying it. So I could stroke my beloved's face because I enjoy that. And then the partner will say yes or no, maybe, or please. And there are various providers. I don't suggest you try this at home because it needs to be really curated and practiced and demonstrated. But just to give you an idea of how it can work, it helps people become attuned in the moment. Is it a yes? Is it a no? Am I not sure? What am I not sure of? And, can I dare to say that I'm really enjoying this? So it does many different things at once. It enhances communication, but it brings awareness to the process.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, and it can happen at so many levels, like why you end up discovering why am I not, where am I not saying no when I need to? I can talk about this couple if you like, or maybe you've got more you'd like to say, Rosy or Karen.
Well, I think you've talked over the years I've known you about tools and ways. Clearly, this in a couple, both partners need to be on board and knowing this is the aim, to be opening and to be softening into this level of sensitivity and connection. So this leads us into the question of couple dynamics and, getting people on board with this way of being and connecting. How does that happen, Leora?
I think that's an excellent question, because I think one of the difficulties that people can face in relationship is that one partner is keen and the other isn't. And what do you do? How do you handle that? And there isn't one particular answer, but one thing I would say is don't wait, because one thing that I do is help a partner within a couple, if the other partner isn't wanting to come to see me, find ways to reach them. So it's very different experience as the reluctant partner, when you're being dragged and told essentially you're not good enough, and if you don't do this, I'm going to be miserable. And there's a place for that, but it's often just not very engaging. There is a place for a bottom line, and there are ways to say that in a very loving, connected way. But it's different if one person can, for example, so it's more frequently the woman, in my experience, who's longing for intimacy, and the man who's quite relatively content, or appears to be. But it can be the opposite way around. But let's imagine it's the woman for now, and she might want him to man up and take her, or just be more responsible in life, in the house. She might want to surrender more. She might want to feel more cherished and adored. She might want sex to become more expansive, something more than just intercourse. So one thing that we can do in that situation is help her to become more of that person. So to help her, for example, to relinquish some of the control she's holding in the relationship, which seems paradoxical, because we always hope that he's going to just do his thing so we can let go. But there's actually ways to do that where we hold ourselves better, and we simply say no to what isn't working and start to invite something. So not the traditional concept of a seductress, but we start to become more soft and inviting, like a wet, juicy. Am I allowed to say words on this program?
You have done.
Something that's relevant to the topic. If we, as a woman, become that, and we're saying, "Darling," we don't even have to say very much. Tonight, I would so love it if you would just adore me, just for 10 minutes. I'm going to lie back. Please just caress me with your hands. I love your touch. Just for 10 minutes. Oh, that was divine. Thank you. I feel so What can I do for you?
Yeah.
What man wouldn't want that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can remember from my own experience of training with John and Hilary in Skydancing Tantra, them talking about this. They said so much and so much wisdom. This idea of this primary wounding in the masculine and in the feminine, and particularly for the masculine energy of feeling crushed and criticized. So you've absolutely beautifully demonstrated how you can invite what you want as opposed to crushing and deballing and, making your partner feel less than.
I think women can do that. And I don't entirely concur with this deballing, because I tend to find that the men who, might consider themselves being deballed by the woman were originally deballed by their mothers or their environment. And actually, it's their responsibility, but they need help to reclaim that. I think it's a little bit more complex, but at the same time, one doesn't want to perpetuate that. These are very deep, raw, real wounds that many men hold. And the more we as women play into it, the worse it gets for everyone. And I think one of the healing processes for men who are wanting to really find themselves, I have to say, in a couple I've been working with recently, this man who considered himself not a macho man, not a this kind of man, not a that kind of man, found himself such a sense of pleasure and joy and power, but not in the sense, but more in the sense of agency, authority, vitality, in being able to take on more of the leadership role. And he found that in himself partially through really finding that connection to the beauty of his own genitals. I don't just mean the aesthetic beauty, but what is this about? These are the genitals are a place of love, of generation, of life. So these are such incredible opportunities for both genders.
Gorgeous. And in terms of women and the kind of wounding that you see in women, can you say something about that?
Oh gosh, there's so much. I'm just wondering where to start.
Well, I think, probably one of the things I would have experienced and seen in my own mother and in the patterning is that the being unmet and the being and feeling alone and feeling the lack of emotional connection, never mind sexual connection or spiritual connection, and that thing of and that turning into anger, which can be very critical and very wounding, and very perpetuating of that, because it's not very attractive when you're full of rage towards your partner.
Yes, and that's a hard one, and it is, it is something that is as you say quite frequent and very heartbreaking, because what appears to be a woman nagging a man is actually a woman who's desperately lonely and appealing as best she can for contact with a man who perhaps doesn't comprehend or doesn't know how to offer that. And I think that's where a curated space is very helpful, because that man can be very easily supported to receive her, but to receive her in doses that he can handle with resources he didn't previously have. So that when he starts to connect with himself in a different way, when he's more attuned to his own, because what often happens is this woman gives this barrage of emotion to a man who's closed here and closed down below. It's not going anywhere. But sometimes a simple eye gazing exercise for a short period of time and a few words and some guidance on the theme that Karen elucidated earlier, where one feels one's own interiority as the baseline. So you're feeling your own interiority, you're letting the eyes gently come open, you're with receptive gaze noticing the other. And then you can even just close them again. Something happens where it pretty much always a person actually has an experience of the other for that moment.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What's come to mind there? I can remember a very good female friend saying to me that she was very frustrated with her partner, and she said, "It feels like I'm playing tennis with myself, like I'm batting the ball, running round, batting it back, running back round, batting it back, that I'm doing both halves of the game here." Yeah.
Totally. And I've been there, and it's so tempting. It's so tempting to just feel if I was to just bat the ball a bit harder or get a complete, ace, it would be fine. And it's like having to step back from that and go and express my vulnerability. I'm feeling really lonely. Would you give me a hug?
Beautiful, beautiful. And so this question of, I think you've been talking about it all along, but receptivity and sensitivity, another thing I learned, which was very important for me to learn, was about this ability to receive. I think if you haven't received much love or attention or focus as a child, then often there isn't really much of an in channel. Is that what you see?
Totally. It's very hard because, a woman might say, I want this, I want that. When it actually comes to it, she's terrified because for many reasons, but one can be loss, early loss, sometimes loss of the father, or just loss of contact, or that contact was sexualized, any kind of thing like that. But, in order to receive, we have to be vulnerable and we have to trust. And sometimes we go into relationship and we go into sexual connection without establishing those parameters, without really having taken the time to say the hello and to really assess, am I safe enough and what would make me safe enough? And to take it a step at a time. Just to jump elements and themes for a moment, because you, Rosy, mentioned the word rage earlier on. So women, mostly in my experience, who come to workshops or sessions, they have some degree of genital rage, as often do men. And we don't necessarily know that or recognize that. So there are some exercises to help come in touch with that. And often what that leads to is a woman saying a very strong no from the genital region to the things that that weren't right for her. Perhaps, if it was in childhood, something that she had no control over, but now she can say no. And maybe it's the things that she as an adult has allowed subsequently that were not right. So she now says that no, and it's very redeeming. And once that has been really felt, there's naturally a softening in not just the genitals, but in the whole being, because it's all completely connected.
And you also mentioned the theme when we were talking of devotion. So tell us about this, as it seems to be at the heart of Tantra and Neo-Tantra.
I would say so. And, it's still a theme I'm coming to comprehend for myself. So this sutra from the traditional tantras, it says, look lovingly at some object. Continue to look at this object. And here in the midst of the object, the blessing. Now, there are many translations because it's all written in Sanskrit. But the essence of this is that and often we do it in this posture, which is the namaste posture, which actually changes our energetic system and it brings us into a natural place. We can just stay and we can be with another person. We can be with an object, an insect, a plant. And without doing anything, we can start to feel that quality of love as we just are there without trying to do anything. It evolves. And then there are some very gentle meditations, like I alluded to earlier, where we're just very, very gently stroking the other. And one is simply receiving and one is simply offering. And when one is offering, this is the interesting part, it's also a meditation. So one is looking to feel the pleasure in offering the caress, whilst also having the sense of adoring the other, treating each millimeter of their body as sacred, as special, recognizing the magic and the mystery in this person. And you don't need to make this happen. You just start to do it with this attitude, and something will evolve. And that feels so much better. And it's possible to approach lovemaking like that. So where the orientation is not about racing to orgasm, but the orientation is about feeling. So, for example, a man can be inside a woman, but keep the arousal level relatively low. So rather than trying to go, they sort of relax and they're connected and they're communicating and there's eye contact. And they don't get to that point where the urgency kicks in. And something will happen. It will. It does.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, give us some examples of the kinds of issues that people bring to you and the kind of resolutions that you witness in the work you do with couples and individuals. Leora, you mentioned when we were talking before this about some significant work you'd done recently with young guys that had been very helpful to change patterns, or that interested me. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, maybe I'll talk about a different youngish guy and then who we spoke about before, because I wanted to talk about also that in the context of healing from separation, healing from divorce, which I think affects so many people, and what we might be left with. And as a woman, in my ordinary life, I'm more attuned to what that's like for a woman. But as a professional, I'm also having more exposure to how that might be for a man. And how when a marriage fails, that man can feel not only that sense of failure from the event, but all the historical difficulties he might have had with his own identity up to that point. So the conversation we had previously, context now being younger men, I think it's a lot more difficult because of the exposure to porn in a different way to how it used to be. And video porn is so much more vivid than magazines, which it used to be when I was little. And what that does is it creates a connection between the brain and the genitals, leaving out the heart, leaving out the relational element. And it actually wires that in. So it's very difficult to not do that. And so I was working with a young man who had a lovely relationship with a young woman, but had all these images and felt guilty and didn't know how to bring it all in. And, at the same time was quite worried that if he didn't keep generating these images, he would lose his erection. So he was really scared. So we had to approach it from various different angles, one of which was the relational angle, and starting to just become more honest and vulnerable with her. Nothing to do with the sexual topics, but just starting to show up in a different way. And that made an enormous difference. It created a different context for the relationship. And over time, he was able to say to her, you know, I may not get erect, or we may need to stop. And that was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, that he found that she was quite happy with that. And that opened everything up, to be able to do that.
Beautiful. And, you know, as simple as that, isn't it? As simple as I love the fact that you name the relational aspect, the heart, you know, and I remember from lesson 1 on my own experience of the training that talking about the connection between sex, heart and spirit. And I do think that this is massive, the shutting down of the heart and the losing of the heart connection, because of these fears and the performance, the fears regarding performance. But what you've just brought to mind, thinking of fear, is what happens to some of my clients who have cancer and who have big operations, such as losing a breast, or that's the most common in my practice, because the most people I see are women with breast cancer. And one of them actually said to me, you know, who's going to want me now? You know, I'm ugly. I'll never have sex again. Who's going to want me now? And I think she came to you. I think so. This is another way that people can come to you, is if their self-image has been dented or diminished and they've lost their sense of beauty. Because another thing that I learned with John and Hilary was that this ability to receive as a woman is directly proportional to how beautiful or worthy of that attention and love you feel. And if you've shut down and are starting to feel like like you've got hardly any self-esteem and that you're not worthy of love and attention, you know, things are not really going to happen, or you're going to just shut down yourself and be off the planet. But you've done quite a bit of work, haven't you, with clients in that space?
Well, I'm very grateful to you, because you've referred several people to me, so I've had these opportunities. And it is incredibly moving when a woman finds that sense of herself and her own womanliness and exuberance that she may actually never have had, even with the 2 breasts, and, you know, will evoke that in a man. I've, you know, one person who you referred to me, who saw me individually for some time, came to a couple of workshops, you know, a middle-aged woman, and, you know, she was attracting male attention because of the way she was, because of how strong and confident she felt in herself, despite, you know, having essentially been mutilated by surgery, but also her life having been saved, and seeing it also in that light. And men respecting her for that, respecting her for that beauty, much more than some, you know, very peripheral thing. It's like, well, who do we want to attract? You know, do we want someone who just wants to see 2 perfectly shaped breasts? Or do we want someone who wants to meet us, you know, in its full form?
I can see Karen beaming. She's beaming there.
I am beaming. I mean, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for such a beautiful, tender conversation between the 2 of you on a subject that isn't spoken about very often. So the first thing I'm receiving is, oh my God, I'm not alone. And I wish that for our listeners, that they hear these topics and what people are struggling with, and they relate, and they know they are not alone. I mean, for me, my biggest fear in being that goddess that you described is rejection, and completely honest with that. And it comes from my back condition. I've got scoliosis, and people have been trying to fix me since I was 14. So having people comment on my body every single day when I was younger, I have learned that it's not beautiful. That's the story that I've told myself. So that my fear of rejection is what stops me coming forward as the goddess. There are times when I do it and I feel comfortable. There are times when it just completely shuts me down. And the other topic that I love is when you talk about porn, because I have a massive no to it. And so much so, I went into counselling where the counsellor would say to me, well, is it because you're upset for the girls that are in the films? No. I couldn't grasp what it was. But now, listening to your conversation, I know my no for porn is because it prevents the connection from the heart. And when you said, it forms something mind to genitals and misses the heart, I know it's the heart connection that is the biggest desire for me in relationship, sexual or not. This is with my friends, but with my partner. So if something comes in that stops that, that's a no for me. Thank you for naming that and giving me that clarity. That is huge just in these 45 minutes. I am eager to know more. And thank you so, so much for these topics. And the way that you two have spoken with each other today, so tender and so loving. It's just pure leadership, love. I am very honoured to have witnessed and be able to comment on this.
Thank you, Karen. And yes, I sense that there is so much more we can explore. But Leora, in terms of what you offer, I know you've written a book, which would be a good way for people to dive in. Can you tell us the name of your book?
Yes, it's called Tantra, The Path to Blissful Sex.
Right. Tantra, The Path to Blissful Sex, Leora Light Woman. And I believe you were christened Light Man.
Exactly.
And changed your name to Light Woman, which is absolutely great. And you offer this work with couples and individuals. So if people want to connect with you, they go to Diamond Light.
So I offer sessions for individuals and couples. I also offer bespoke retreat days. So that would be in my home, 1 day, 2 days for just you or just you and your partner. It's a very special event. There's an online course as well, which was made in actually Rosy's invitation. So I'm very grateful for that. I offer supervision and I've got some online Zoom workshops that we're going to be launching soon as well. All of that's there on the website, which is diamondlighttantra.com. And you can also email us at office@diamondlighttantra.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And just bless you for your incredible creativity and sensitivity and just being such a beacon of light for all of us who are longing for that blissful union with each other, with ourselves, with life. Thank you so much, Leora.
Thank you, Rosy. Thank you, Karen. It's been an absolute honour to share with you today.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and showed you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosy. I mean, we do have to remember that transformation begins with love, and that is self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
That is the truth, Karen. And we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community and check out our trainings and our services such as my Dr. Rosy Daniel Clinic and Karen's beautiful women's circles and retreats and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like us to interview, and the questions you want us to ask and get answered. Through the contact page on our website, just go to aliveandlovingit.org.
I've really enjoyed reading them. But when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosy and I will be. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.